So tonight I want to talk about, with it being the new year and the start and a new beginning, I want to talk about starting off right. And I want to talk about specifically, how do we start in our programs and our classes, and how do we start on our Sundays, right? When we look at the beginning of our service and the beginning of our kids' church, we want to be intentional about how we start things off. We want to be intentional about how we begin things, because how we begin things and how we start things, that really can help guide the next steps, or guide what's coming next. Or if we don't start right, that could start us off on the wrong foot, and then we're trying to play catch up. So there's a couple of areas I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about, here as kids ministers, kids leaders, Sunday school teachers, I want to first talk about being intentional about the first time impression, or the first time that a guest, a family in this case, of kids and parents come into our campus. Now, there's a lot of talk and resources on a first time experience, right? Like when a person comes into our doors, they walk into our campus, right? Of greeting them and making sure they have a great first time experience. There's a statistic out there that says that it only takes a person 7 minutes to determine a first impression of your church, right? And so today I want to kind of take that concept, but really I want to kind of focus that on our families and our kids, right? And ask this question to all of us: are we being intentional about starting off our families when they come into our door, or even when they come into the parking lot, when they park their car and get out? Are we being intentional about starting that experience off right? Because that first experience, and that first moment of them walking into our doors, right? That's such an important time, that we're introducing our church, we're introducing the culture of our church, we're introducing our kids ministry to them. And so there's one principle that I like to kind of share with people, and especially kids ministers, kids leaders, kids pastors, Sunday school directors, is that look at what your church is doing. Are there things in your church that are already happening, right, that maybe can be reflected in your kids ministry? That things that are already happening in your church that aren't happening specifically in your kids ministry, but you could implement. So things that are happening on the general church level, but hey, let's take that and let's specifically aim that to our family. So I'll give you some specific examples. So greeting. So one thing that we did many years back was, our church has greeters that come into or that are in the front. They're in the parking lot, they have signs, or they're in the lobby, they're greeting people. And I thought, well, why don't we have people that are greeting everyone, but they're specifically there for the families and kids, right? They're specifically there that when they come in, and if there's a family, they're making sure that they're going right for them. They're giving a high five, they're introducing themselves, and they're really helping with that first step, right? And so think about, okay, when when a family comes in, and I know there's a lot of people that can relate to this, right? If you have a first time family that comes in, and they have 2, 3, 4 kids, it could have been a war just them getting there, right? They were late out running the door. They were spilling their cereal bowl on the way. They were trying to wrangle all the kids to make sure they're in their seats and not going crazy, and they got to get out of the car, this new place that they just found. They got to have a smile on their face, right? And we want to make sure that when they come in, that first encounter, that first step, that first initial welcoming, right, that there's intentionality behind it. We don't want families to come in and they're kind of, okay, they walk in and, okay, what do I do next? Where do I go? We want to meet them where they are. And so be intentional about that. One thing that we saw too in our church was, that our first time, and I know a lot of churches do this, our first time guests were getting gift bags. So we said, hey, let's do that for our kids. So when a first time guest, a child comes in, they get a gift bag. Kids Rock is our kids ministry, so they get a gift bag with our Kids Rock T-shirt. And our greeters know about, like, for example, we have it all organized. If they're a pre-K preschool child, they get a yellow bag because that's a small shirt. If they're the next grade up, first through third, I think it is, they would get a yellow bag. So again, it's one size fits all. I'm not saying that you have to do a T-shirt, that you have to do a specific way, but what are some things that your church is already doing that you can start to implement, right? And even if there's things that aren't specifically happening in your church, right? I'm sure every pastor would be totally fine with, hey, if you want to greet as a kids leader, as a Sunday school teacher, you want to be up there greeting families, go for it, right? No one would ever have a problem with that. So have that mindset of, I want to meet them in that first step, right? Have that first step of when they walk into our doors, of welcoming them, of starting off right. Here's another thing I want to challenge everyone to do. This is something that we can all do. We're all familiar with our church campus, right? We're all familiar with where the bathrooms are, where the check-in area is, where the classes are. But I want to challenge you to start in the parking lot and walk through your front door and do this. I wouldn't do this on Sunday morning, but do this when there's not a lot of people around, and try to look through the eyes of a first-time guest, right? Think about, okay, when I come through the door as a first-time family, is there anyone here greeting me? Or do I know where the restrooms are? Do I know where the check-in area is? Are there maybe people that you can put in place as greeters that can guide them to the next step? So think about, we had that first step. Now, what about the next steps? I did this myself a few months back, and I realized, our building's different. It's very multi-purpose. And so Sundays, a child could be in one class Sunday, but then they could be in a different room on Tuesday. And so first-time guests, that can be confusing. And so I realized that on Tuesdays are midweek, that, there really wasn't anything clearly identifying where the classes were. So we ordered signs that we can put up and take down outside of the classrooms, right? That was kind of a blind spot that, again, I'm in my building all the time. You're in your building all the time. Think about that from a first-time guest. How can we help with those next steps? So again, continue with those next steps. When they walk through the door, they get their gift bag or whatever it might be. Where do they go next, right? And this is a whole other seminar, but I'm a big believer in having some kind of check-in system, right? Check in, check out. You want to always be an orderly and checking kids in, checking out with security and all that good stuff. And there's all kinds of church management systems out there. But even if you just need to start off with a paper, and signing them and signing out and just starting with that's fine too. But if you have a check-in team or a welcome team, right, help them understand and realize that it's not just checking kids and families in, but they're the face, right? They're that first impression of your kids ministry, of your church. And so I encourage our check-in team to, if they have a new family, give them a tour, right? Let them see where their class is going to be. Really having that perspective of, okay, if I'm a new family, if I'm a new person and I have a child or 2 or 3 children with me, right, I want to make sure that the next steps are clear. So again, that's kind of that first half, starting off right, starting them off when they come in, that they're greeted, right? That if you can do a first time, gift or something like that, but even if you can't, that's okay. Greet them, but then make sure that there's a guidance of what the next steps are. So the second thing I want to talk about is, okay, we've gotten them in the door, right? They're here. So we've started them off right in their initial experience. But now when they walk into our classroom, we want to start off right with the kids that walk into our classroom. So one kind of mindset that's good to have is, if your class starts at 10 o'clock, right? Don't have the mindset that your class starts at 10 o'clock. Have the mindset that your class starts at 9:55, right? It's when your kids come into the class, right? And this is one thing that I just reiterated to my staff, that we want to have that culture and that mindset of that when students come into our classroom, right, that we're not going in with them, but we're receiving them. That when they come in, we're welcoming them even before they get there, because that's going to really help determine the rest of our class and the rest of our ministry hour. So 2 things will happen. If I don't start off right of welcoming them and engaging them as they come in, I'm going to start to begin to play catch up, or I'm going to start to, things are going to kind of get railroaded if that focus is there. Or if I do start off on the right foot, if I do start off with that right focus, and with that right that's going to help from the beginning, right? That's going to help guide them. And sorry, one second, my son wanted to give some teacher tips, so sorry about that. That's gonna help with the rest of the class, right? That guidance is in place because I started off on the right foot. So there's many different ways to do this. So let's talk about Sunday school. I know not everyone it has their cameras on, but I know you can raise your hand on Zoom. Raise your hand if you minister in a kids church setting, like a children's church, multiple grades setting. Hit the raise your hand button. Let's see who we got. If you can do that, is that possible to do that? React. Yes. Okay. All right. Great. So we got a couple people raising their hands. All right. So those of you that are involved in a kids church setting, okay, good. So you have a group of kids. They're coming in. It's like a corporate worship. All right. Raise your hand if you are involved in a Sunday school class setting where it's more of like a traditional teaching style, broken up into grades or ages. And there might be many of us that do both. Okay, good. So this we want to have the same thinking with kids church and Sunday school, right? And there are many ways that we can still, I believe Sunday school is still effective, and it might be called something different now, but having classes where you're teaching from the Word of God and breaking down principles, right, is still a very effective format. And so when your students walk into your classroom, right, be intentional about engaging them, captivating them as soon as they walk in. I always use the example. There's a lady in our church, Pam, who's been teaching for many, many years, and she's incredible. And Pam is known for always kind of cooking or making something. I don't know exactly how she does it. She's pretty amazing. She'll bring some kind of I don't know if it's an easy bake oven, or I know they don't even make those anymore, but she brings something that she's cooking something, she's making something, and the kids love it, right? And adults tend to kind of grab it, they kind of tend to be drawn to her room when they smell something, because they know Pam's cooking. But one Tuesday, one midweek in specific, and midweek is when we kind of do more of our, Sunday school format. Kids were coming into the classroom, and as they were coming in, they were literally smelling fresh bread. She had somehow baked fresh bread, a few minutes before, and she was talking about the bread of life, right? She was talking about that whole concept of the everlasting water, the everlasting, life that God gives us, and the bread of life. And so those kids, when they came in, what happened? There was an instant expectation. Oh my goodness, Sister Pam has made something for us, right? She's created this for us. There's something exciting happening. There's something so immediately, right? Their attention was engaged, and it doesn't have to be that, right? If you can't cook, that's okay, or that's not your gifting. That's fine. The idea is that, right, you're engaging them, right? Maybe your theme is on construction, right? Play some sound effects of construction and hammers going, and something that goes along with your lesson, right? Do something that starts them right as soon as they come in, that starts them off on the right foot. That's what's really going to help you. So now let's apply this to kids church, because I know we have people that do both, right? So a kids church setting, right, is a little more high, kind of high energy, and there's many grades involved. And I have a method that I teach called the funnel effect, and I'm not going to get completely into that. I have some resources on the links I sent you that you can check it out. But the funnel effect, I basically talk about treating your kids' church as a funnel, right? And so starting off broad, right, wide, but then narrowing it down. And so let's just talk about that first stage. That first stage that's wide, right, that's broad, that's the beginning of the kids' church. And that first stage is engaging. So when your kids come into the kids' church, you want to immediately connect with them. You want to immediately engage with them. So again, using technology, we always like to have music, a countdown going, that when kids come in, they're not coming into an empty that space, but maybe they're coming in the middle of a game or an icebreaker. I love to start off a kids church with just a wacky icebreaker, just a wacky game that kids can jump in. Why? Because they can immediately just be engaged. They can immediately just be captivated. They can immediately just jump in. And so think about your kids church. If it's something to where your kids are coming in and then maybe they're just kind of, talking among themselves and there's really no direction, really think about, okay, how can I start? Let's think about a kids church starts at 10, but when they come in, let's already have it where something's already happening. There's music playing. There's a countdown going. We're throwing a beach ball in the air, whatever it might be, right? Of just having something that you're connecting with them, you're engaging with them right from the beginning. So when you start off right, that's going to help us in so many different areas. And so just to recap, starting off right, being intentional about that first time experience, right? Take some time this week or next week, walk through your building, walk through your campus, walk through your kids' church, your Sunday school classrooms, and think about, okay, what are some blind spots that we're missing for our first time guests? And be intentional about meeting them when they come in, greeting them, being there. And then starting off right in your Sunday school class, right? Engage them as they come in, have a game ready, have some kind of sensory thing, whether it's the bread, whether it's the sound effects, have something happening as they come in. And then for your kids' church, right? Start off engaging and connecting with them, right? Something fun, something high energy, because the whole point of it, like we said, we're not just doing it just to do it or to fill space, right? And I want to also kind of give this little nugget, right? Everything we do, even if it seems like it's entertaining, we don't do it to entertain. We do it to connect, right? When I tell a goofy joke, when you throw a rubber chicken around, you throw a beach ball around, you do something crazy, right? We do that with the intention of connecting with them, right? We're speaking that language that they understand. Kids love to be goofy. Kids love to have fun. Kids love to do all those things. And again, we're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but we're doing it with the sake of connecting. And so when we start off right in those areas, I really think that's going to help us be more effective in everything that we do. And again, starting off right in that first time experience, starting off right in our classroom, and starting off right in our kids' church. So that's pretty much all I got for tonight, Brother Cody. And if any other questions y'all have, but that's kind of what I wanted to leave us all with here tonight, of just starting off right in this new year.
I'm going to take over for Cody.
Yeah, go for it.
That was amazing. Super, super practical, but like also just, I think, inspiring to people who are, as you said, trying to start the year off, just maybe restructuring or rethinking how they're going to kind of go about the year. So thank you for sharing a lot of that. I think just everything you said was very you really think about how you could utilize it. And I think that for kids ministry, that's what a lot of us on this call are looking for. So is there anybody who wants to voice a question to Josh tonight? If you do, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and just ask it. We'll just see if anybody has any questions. I see a question, I think, coming in here. Due to space constraints, we have our big kids 7 to 12 mixed with small kids 3 to 6. How do you keep them all engaged?
Yeah, great question. So one kind of rule I like to follow is, right, if you can engage and I know we all, right, have been there and ourselves are teaching kind of like that preteen middle school age. If you can keep 11, 12-year-old boy engaged, right, where they're focused, right, you can keep anyone engaged. So I always kind of try that trickle down method of, if I'm just aiming for the preschoolers or maybe not preschoolers, but kindergarten, 5, 6-year-olds, that's not always going to translate to the older kids. So when you specifically have such large groups of 3 to 12, that is a very large gap. And so what I always try to aim to do is if I'm doing something that's funny, engaging for the older group, more than likely the younger group is going to also find that engaging as well. Another thing to think about, and again, I know there's space constraints, if you're finding that maybe that those 3, 4 year olds are just at some point they're just not engaging or during the lesson, if you're able to take them to another place in the room or do a small group with activity with them, or take them with a couple other teachers to for their own specific lesson. Again, I know that might not always work. That is a possibility you might have to do. But again, if you're just keeping the 3 to 12 year olds, I one would just again avoid any dead space. Make sure that you have a structure in place, right? And again, just engage, go for that older group, and that will trickle down.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Is there anybody else that has a question you want to type into the chat, or you can go ahead and ask it here on Zoom? We'll just give another couple seconds.
Y'all are taking it easy on me here.
Yeah, I see that. What are you using for curriculum?
So for our curriculum, we have, like I mentioned, we have the midweek classes, and so for that we use the curriculum from Pentecostal Publishing House, and so that works pretty well for us. And then our curriculum on Sundays for the kids' church, that is written in house, and
Okay.
so we write that amongst ourselves. We kind of come up with our own theme. We do a theme. We aim for every 3 months we do a new theme, and we really kind of take that approach of, okay, what is it that our kids are needing specifically? What are some questions they've been asking? What are some things that we feel like would speak to them? And that's how we kind of take that approach on Sundays.
I got another question here in the chat. It says, how would you suggest keeping the kids that speak a different language engaged? We have a good amount of non-English speaking kids in our children's church.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually was asked this at a teacher training seminar that I did in person, and one of the ladies there, it was actually neat that it was all English speaking teacher training teachers, but there was one lady that only spoke Spanish, and so while I was speaking, this other teacher was just quietly translating to her, while I was speaking. And this question came up, and she had a great suggestion of kind of mirroring. Again, it depends on your situation, but she had a great suggestion of mirroring that if you have volunteers that speak that language, is to get them engaged. And maybe if it's only 1 or 2 students, maybe it's a volunteer that's sitting with them and translating. And then maybe, if you have a small group activity, that person is assigned to them. Obviously, if it's more and more students, you're going to need more volunteers for that to maybe have their own class. But that was something that I felt like was very, that I've seen that's effective of engaging volunteers that if they, if it's a Spanish speaking child that only speaks Spanish, so of having those volunteers that speak Spanish kind of be assigned to them was something that I've heard that works well.
Cool. I got a couple more. One is, what does your sign out process look like?
Yeah. So we use a check-in system with our CMS, which is a church management system. And I know there's many out there. Planning Center, Fellowship One is what we use. Breeze is another one. And so basically, like I said before, we really treat our check-in process as a ministry. And so we have volunteers that all they do is check in and check out. That's all they do. And for us, it's been a great way to really get like volunteers, just kind of involved of that shallow water of maybe they don't want to teach, but hey, they're great with families, they're great with kids. And so, we have a great, we literally have like, I think 7 or 8 people split amongst the 2 months. One team will serve 1 month and one team will serve the next month. But we have 7 or 8 people that's all they do is check in throughout the year. And so when they come into the check-in area. I don't have any pictures with me, but we try to make it, bright, and we have signage, and there's no doubt that that's the check-in area, right? And so that's always good to have kind of like a designated check-in area. They come in, And if they're brand new, we have a check-in form that they'll fill out some quick information, and then through the system, they will print out two stickers. So the child will get a sticker that has a code on it, and then the parent will get a corresponding sticker that has a code on it, and they need to present that to check out their child at the end. And so, that's that in a nutshell. That's kind of what it looks like. And then everyone goes into worship together. And then when they're dismissed, our checkout team knows, they know before the parents are dismissed that not that they've checked in, but they also check out. So, like for example, we have our kids' church room, and we've been seeing great growth. We've been seeing 40 to 50 kids in our first through fifth grade class, and so we have people that all they're doing is check out. That way we can be with the kids, and maybe we're doing games at the end or whatever it might be. And so, they use the microphone. We have a little student chapel with sound system. And instead of having all the kids just rush out, right, they know only leave when your name is called. So parents will come up to the door. They might line up there and they'll present the code. The checkout assistant will call the name. Hey, Jimmy, Jimmy comes. And so that's something that we've done for many years. And we can always make that better, but that's kind of the bones of it is really worked of having a very orderly process. And with check in, check out, right? You always want to have that mindset of, okay, if I have 10 kids, I want to have that vision of, I want to be ready for 20 kids. If I have 30 kids, I want to be ready for 50. And really that a big part of that is your check in and check out process. That if you don't have a system in place, that can really start to cap and then even worse, right? That something happens security wise, that a child, is not accounted for, whatever it might be. So that, in a nutshell, that's how we do our check-in, check-out system.
Cool. A couple more. What specific tips can you share for churches with only a few children and limited volunteers?
Yeah. Very good question. So one other kind of strategy, or I don't even know if strategy is a good word, but kind of a different perspective. And this is something that I try to do periodically. It's kind of like how I suggested that, you look at your church and your campus, through the eyes of a first time guest. Well, one thing that I did in the beginning when I came here and really helped us, and then we try to do it periodically as a team, is look at like what you have, right? It's so easy as kids ministers for us to look at what we don't have, right? We don't have the budget for this. We don't have the resource for that. That's very easy for us to have that, to do that. We all have done that. But, really look at, as cliche as it sounds, start with what you do have. And so what I mean by that is, I think every church, through the busyness and through just the craziness of life, we all have resources and things, I think that if we really were to look at it, that we're not 100% using. Like for example, when we started our check-in process, I realized that we were using one printer, and I realized that we had a second printer that we hadn't used for a couple of years. Someone had just put in a box and forgot about it, and that really helped our process of, hey, we have this, let's use that, what we already have, right? Maybe your church has access to ProPresenter, or your church has access to some software, and for one reason or another, your kids ministry, isn't using it, or hasn't signed up yet, or hasn't logged in yet, right? Whatever that looks like, really just take down an inventory. And I think everyone here could probably find 1, 2 plus things that is available to you, that you're not using. You want to capture things on a camera, right? And maybe there's someone that does camera work or photography, or there's an extra camera they're not using during this time, right? And you can use that. So that's one thing that I would do, is that if you have those limited resources, if you have those limited staff, really just look at, okay, what am I using? What is available here that maybe I'm not using? And then with limited volunteers, right? That's something I think we all see, and that we all deal with. And so, I saw someone the other day kind of take the financial, there's that financial principle of, instead of instead of living paycheck to paycheck, right? Invest, right? That's kind of a basic, financial principle that we want to invest our money. But I saw them apply that to volunteers, and I thought that was interesting. That instead of just going from week to week, right, take some time to invest in your volunteers, right? Take some time to give them training or to just hang out with them, right? Have a laser tag night, right? Have a pizza night. Christmas time is always a great time. To have a Christmas party with your volunteers. We're about to do a launch where we're gonna have some food, where we're gonna recognize them. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna do some training where it's gonna be like a kickoff. So take who you do have, right, and invest in them, right? That quality over quantity. And I think those two things hopefully will help.
Good. And I have one more that is, I'll keep this as the last one. Do you have any specific exercises that you would keep older children 11 to 14 engaged?
Yeah, exercises. Now I'm guessing she's not or whoever Christina here. I'm guessing we're not talking about push-ups. I'm going to guess. Christina, are you able to ask to put specifically, like, or do you mean like games or activities? Is that what is maybe she's referring to if she's listening? So if she's able to do that, as far as the older kids, like I said before, you want to when you have those group, okay, games and activities, great. So when you have that group of kids, right? Again, if it's multiple ages, right? Aim for something that's going to engage the older kids. But yeah, as far as specifically that 11 to 14-year old, that's always an in between age where you have these kids that they're about to be teenagers, they're about to be in the youth group, and there could be that temptation of just to kind of act like they're too cool for school. But I've noticed that any kind of games or activities that keeps them moving, that are very simple, they eat them up, right? They still have that inner kid of games that have competition are always great as well. There are many different games out there. I know it's hard to kind of show them on a Zoom. One game that I love to do is called the opposite game, and this is a great game that you can just do with a group of kids, no matter what age. And so it's kind of the opposite of Simon Says, that if you say to put your right hand up, they have to put their left hand up, right? But if they put their right hand up, if they don't do the opposite, then they're out. And so you can have fun with it, look up, but they have to look down. And so games like that are super fun. There's one called Steal the Bacon, where you line up the kids, kind of 15, 20 feet apart, and you put something in the middle. Could be a rubber chicken or something random. And each kid on each line has a number. So you have one on each side, one over here, number two over here, number two over here, and so on. And when you call a number, for example, if you call number two from this side and number two from this side have to rush to grab the toy in the middle. And those kind of games, especially with that age group, we could play for hours. Like, kids just love that. So I would say, in a nutshell, any kind of games and activities that keep them moving, that are competitive, that are simple and fun, you can't go wrong with that.
Okay. Any last thoughts outside of the chat for Josh tonight? Josh, again, we thank you for being with us and sharing just that practical advice, just great stuff. Again, this will be recorded. This is recorded and will be posted to our podcast. You can find that iloveocm.ca. If you want to share this out to your own teams and your own volunteers at your church, go ahead and do so. And again, we appreciate those resources. They'll be shared out to our social media, and you can find those there. And thanks for being with us tonight. And you'll see some information roll out for our next quarterly call. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Awesome. Thank you all for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, bro. It's great to have you here tonight.
All right. God bless you all. Thank you.
See you guys. Have a great evening, everyone.